The humid Louisiana air hung heavy over Charity Hospital in New Orleans as nurse Amelia Williams finished her final rounds of the evening shift. It was October 15, 1999, and the old hospital corridors echoed with the familiar sounds of medical equipment and distant conversations. Amelia had been working these halls for nearly 15 years, and at 42, she had seen more than her share of life's fragile moments. "Another long night, huh, Amelia?" called out Dr. Martinez as he passed by the nurse's station. "You know how it is, Doctor. The patients don't sleep, so neither do we," Amelia replied with a tired but genuine smile. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and despite the exhaustion evident in her green eyes, she maintained the professional composure that had made her one of the most respected nurses on the ward. As she gathered her belongings from her locker, Amelia's thoughts drifted to home. Her small apartment in the French Quarter wasn't much, but it was hers, and more importantly, it was where Whiskers waited for her. The orange tabby cat had been her companion for the past 8 years, ever since she'd found him as a kitten abandoned near the hospital dumpsters. The October night was unusually cool for Louisiana, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of magnolias and the distant sound of jazz from Bourbon Street. Amelia walked the familiar route home, her white nursing shoes clicking softly against the cobblestone streets. She always took the same path through the quarter, past the antique shops and the old cemetery where Spanish moss draped like curtains from ancient oak trees. "Hey there, beautiful," called out a voice from one of the late-night bars. Amelia quickened her pace, as she always did when walking alone at night. The French Quarter could be unpredictable after dark, especially for a woman walking alone. As she turned the corner onto her street, Amelia noticed something unusual. The streetlight near her apartment building was flickering erratically, casting strange shadows on the sidewalk. She fumbled for her keys, eager to get inside to the warmth and safety of her home. "Whiskers, I'm home," she called out as she opened the door to her second-floor apartment. The orange tabby appeared immediately, purring and rubbing against her legs, as if he hadn't seen her in weeks rather than just 12 hours. "Did you miss me, boy?" she asked, scratching behind his ears. Whiskers had always been unusually affectionate, almost as if he sensed that Amelia needed the companionship more than most people. After her divorce 3 years earlier, the cat had become her closest confidant, the one constant in a life that had seen its share of upheaval. Amelia prepared a simple dinner of leftover jambalaya and settled into her favorite armchair, with Whiskers curled up on her lap. The apartment was modest but cozy, filled with plants and photographs from her nursing school days and family gatherings. On the mantel sat a framed photo of her with her sister Sarah, taken just last Christmas. "You know what, Whiskers? I've been thinking about taking some time off. Maybe we could visit Sarah in Baton Rouge for a few days. Would you like that?" The cat purred in response, his yellow eyes looking up at her with what seemed like understanding. The phone rang, interrupting the peaceful moment. Amelia glanced at the clock. It was nearly midnight. Late calls usually meant the hospital needed her to come in early or cover an extra shift. "Hello?" she answered, expecting to hear the familiar voice of the charge nurse. "Amelia, it's Dr. Martinez. I'm sorry to call so late, but we have a situation here. Mrs. Henderson in room 314 took a turn for the worse, and her family specifically asked for you. I know you just left, but I'll be right there," Amelia said without hesitation. This was who she was, a nurse who put her patients first, even when exhaustion weighed heavy on her shoulders. She gently moved Whiskers from her lap and gathered her things once again. "I'm sorry, boy. Duty calls. I'll be back before you know it." She gave him an extra treat and scratched his favorite spot behind his ears before heading back out into the night. The walk back to the hospital felt different somehow. The flickering streetlight had gone out completely, and the shadows seemed deeper than before. Amelia pulled her sweater tighter around her shoulders and quickened her pace. The French Quarter at midnight was a different world than it was during the day, filled with revelers and tourists, but also with dangers that lurked in the darker corners. As she approached the hospital, Amelia noticed that the emergency room seemed unusually busy for a Thursday night. Ambulances were lined up outside, their red and blue lights painting the building in an eerie glow. She used her employee entrance and headed straight to the elevator, her mind already focused on Mrs. Henderson and what she might need. The elevator seemed to take forever to reach the 3rd floor. When the doors finally opened, Amelia was greeted by the controlled chaos of a medical emergency. Nurses and doctors moved with practiced efficiency, their voices calm but urgent as they coordinated care. "Amelia, thank goodness you're here," said Nurse Patricia, her colleague and friend for over a decade. "Mrs. Henderson's been asking for you specifically. She's stable now, but she was really scared earlier." Room 314 was dimly lit, with only the soft glow of medical equipment providing illumination. Mrs. Henderson, an elderly woman who had been battling pneumonia, looked small and frail in the hospital bed. Her family, 2 adult children and several grandchildren, stood around her bedside with worried expressions. "Amelia," Mrs. Henderson whispered when she saw her favorite nurse enter the room, "I knew you'd come back." "Of course I did, Mrs. Henderson. How are you feeling?" Amelia checked the monitors and adjusted the patient's pillows, her experienced hands working automatically, while her attention remained focused on providing comfort. "Better now that you're here, dear. You have such gentle hands. My grandmother always said you could tell a person's heart by the gentleness of their touch." Amelia spent the next hour monitoring Mrs. Henderson's condition and providing reassurance to the worried family. The elderly woman's breathing gradually became more regular, and her color improved. By 2 a.m. she was sleeping peacefully, and her vital signs had stabilized. "She'll be fine now," Amelia told the family. "The crisis has passed. You should all go home and get some rest. She'll need your energy tomorrow." As the family gathered their belongings and prepared to leave, Mrs. Henderson's daughter approached Amelia. "Thank you so much for coming back tonight. Mum was so frightened, but as soon as she heard you were coming, she calmed down. You're an angel." Amelia felt a warmth spread through her chest at the woman's words. This was why she had become a nurse, to make a difference in people's lives during their most vulnerable moments. The long hours and physical exhaustion were worth it when she could provide comfort and healing. The walk home at 3 a.m. was eerily quiet. Even the French Quarter had settled into the peaceful hours before dawn. Amelia's footsteps echoed off the empty buildings as she made her way through the familiar streets. The air had grown cooler, and she could see her breath in small puffs as she walked. As she approached her building, something felt different. The front door, which she was certain she had locked, stood slightly ajar. Amelia's heart began to race as she considered the possibilities. Had someone broken in? Had she forgotten to lock it in her hurry to return to the hospital? She climbed the stairs slowly, listening for any sounds that might indicate an intruder. Her apartment door was also unlocked, and as she pushed it open, she called out softly, "Whiskers." There was no response. The apartment was dark and silent. Amelia turned on the lights and immediately noticed that something was wrong. Whiskers was nowhere to be seen, and the window in her bedroom, which she never opened due to the fire escape outside, was wide open. "Whiskers," she called more loudly, panic rising in her voice. She searched every room, every hiding spot where the cat might have gone. Under the bed, in the closets, behind the furniture, but Whiskers was gone. Amelia's hands shook as she realized what must have happened. Someone had broken into her apartment, and in their haste to escape, they had left the window open. Whiskers, curious as cats are, must have climbed out onto the fire escape and somehow gotten lost in the maze of buildings and alleyways that made up the French Quarter. She grabbed a flashlight and headed back outside, calling the cat's name as she searched the narrow streets and hidden courtyards. The French Quarter was full of places where a frightened cat could hide, and as the hours passed, Amelia's hope began to fade. By sunrise, she was exhausted and heartbroken. She had to accept the possibility that Whiskers might be gone forever. As she finally returned to her apartment, Amelia felt a profound sense of loss that went beyond just missing her pet. Whiskers had been her anchor, her source of comfort in a world that often felt overwhelming and unpredictable. The next few days passed in a blur of work and searching. Amelia put up flyers around the neighborhood, contacted local animal shelters, and asked everyone she met if they had seen an orange tabby cat. But as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, it became clear that Whiskers was not coming home. The doctor, Sarah Williams Chen, walked through the modern corridors of University Medical Center in New Orleans, her tablet in hand as she reviewed patient charts. It was October 15th, 2024, exactly 25 years since her sister Amelia had died in that tragic car accident while searching for her beloved cat Whiskers. Sarah had been a resident then, just starting her career in internal medicine. Now, at 58, she was the head of the hospital's palliative care unit. The years had been kind to Sarah in many ways. She had built a successful career, married her colleague Dr. James Chen, and raised 2 wonderful children who were now adults with families of their own. But there wasn't a day that went by when she didn't think about Amelia and the cruel twist of fate that had taken her sister's life just as she was beginning to find happiness again after her divorce. "Doctor Williams-Chen, there's someone here to see you," said her assistant Maria, as Sarah finished her morning rounds. "She says it's about your sister." Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. After all these years, people still occasionally reached out with memories of Amelia. Her sister had touched so many lives during her 15 years as a nurse that stories about her kindness and dedication continued to surface even decades later. "Please, send her in," Sarah said, settling into her office chair. The woman who entered was elderly, probably in her 80s, with silver hair and kind eyes that seemed familiar somehow. She moved slowly but with dignity, carrying a small pet carrier that seemed to contain something precious. "Dr. Williams-Chen, my name is Margaret Henderson. I don't know if you remember me, but your sister Amelia took care of my mother back in 1999, just before—" She paused, clearly struggling with how to continue. "Mrs. Henderson," Sarah said gently, "please sit down. I remember you. Your mother was one of Amelia's favorite patients. She spoke about her often." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "Your sister was an angel, Doctor. She came back to the hospital that night, even though her shift was over, just because my mother was frightened. It was the last act of kindness my mother experienced before she passed away peacefully the next morning." Sarah felt the familiar ache in her chest that always accompanied memories of her sister. Amelia was special that way. She never could say no when someone needed her. "That's why I'm here today," Margaret said, her voice growing stronger. "Something extraordinary has happened, and I believe it's connected to your sister." She placed the pet carrier on Sarah's desk and carefully opened the door. Out stepped an orange tabby cat, moving with the careful grace of an elderly feline, but with eyes that were bright and alert. Around his neck was a faded blue ribbon, tied in a simple bow. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. That can't be. I found him yesterday morning in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1, sitting on a grave that wasn't your sister's. He was just sitting there, as if he'd been waiting for someone. When I approached him, he didn't run away like most strays would. Instead, he came right to me, purring as if he knew me." Sarah stared at the cat in disbelief. The resemblance to Whiskers was uncanny. The same orange markings, the same white patch on his chest, even the same intelligent yellow eyes. But it was impossible. Whiskers would have been 33 years old if he were still alive, and cats simply didn't live that long. "Mrs. Henderson, I appreciate you bringing him to me, but this can't be the same cat. Whiskers disappeared 25 years ago, and even if he had survived, he would have died of old age long ago." Margaret nodded understandingly. "I know how it sounds, Doctor, but there's something else." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, faded photograph. "I found this tucked under his collar, along with the ribbon." Sarah took the photograph with trembling hands. It was a picture of Amelia in her nursing uniform, standing outside Charity Hospital. On the back, in Amelia's familiar handwriting, were the words, "For Whiskers, my faithful companion. Love always, Amelia." The room fell silent except for the soft purring of the cat, who had jumped down from the carrier and was now rubbing against Sarah's legs in a gesture that was heartbreakingly familiar. This was exactly how Whiskers used to greet people, with complete trust and affection. "Where exactly did you find him?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was sitting on the grave of someone named Robert Thibodeau, a man who died in 1987. But here's the strange part. When I checked the cemetery records, that's not where your sister is buried. She's in Metairie Cemetery, isn't she?" Sarah nodded, her mind racing. "Yes, we buried Amelia in Metairie, next to our parents. But Robert Thibodeau, that name is familiar." She paused, searching her memory. "He was a patient of Amelia's. She mentioned him several times. He was a homeless man who died alone, and Amelia was the only one who came to his funeral. She said it broke her heart that no one else cared enough to say goodbye." Margaret leaned forward in her chair. "Doctor, I know this sounds impossible, but I've been around long enough to know that sometimes the world works in ways we can't explain. This cat found his way to the grave of someone your sister cared about, carrying her photograph and wearing a ribbon she must have put on him. Maybe some connections are stronger than time itself." Sarah picked up the cat, and he immediately settled into her arms as if he belonged there. His purr was deep and comforting, and when she looked into his eyes, she could swear she saw recognition there. Not just the general friendliness of a social cat, but something deeper, as if he truly knew who she was. Even if this were somehow the same cat, Sarah said, though her rational mind rebelled against the possibility. Why would he appear now, after all these years? Maybe because it's time, Margaret said simply. Maybe he's been waiting for the right moment to come home. Sarah spent the rest of the afternoon trying to focus on her work, but her thoughts kept returning to the cat, now sleeping peacefully in a temporary bed she'd made in her office. She had called her husband James and told him about the strange encounter, and while he was skeptical, he had agreed that she should bring the cat home until they could figure out what to do with him. That evening, as Sarah drove home to her house in the Garden District, the cat sat calmly in the passenger seat, looking out the window as if he were familiar with the route. When they arrived at the house, he walked confidently to the front door and sat down, waiting to be let in. "James, come meet our visitor," Sarah called as she entered the house. Her husband emerged from his study, a tall man with graying hair and the gentle demeanor that had made him an excellent pediatrician. He looked at the cat with scientific curiosity, clearly trying to solve the puzzle that had presented itself. "He certainly looks like the cat in Amelia's photos," James admitted, kneeling down to examine the animal more closely. "But Sarah, you know as well as I do that this is impossible. Cats don't live for 33 years, and they certainly don't disappear for 25 years, only to reappear carrying photographs." "I know what logic tells us," Sarah replied, watching as the cat explored the house with apparent familiarity. "But look at him, James. He's not acting like a stray cat who's been living on the streets. He's clean, well-fed, and completely comfortable with humans. And there's something else." She led James to the living room, where several framed photographs of Amelia sat on the mantel. The cat had positioned himself directly in front of the largest photo, one of Amelia in her garden, smiling at the camera with Whiskers in her arms. "He went straight to that spot," Sarah said softly, as if he knew exactly where to find her. James was quiet for a long moment, his scientific mind warring with the evidence before his eyes. There has to be a rational explanation. Maybe this cat belonged to someone who knew Amelia, someone who kept her photograph all these years. Maybe he escaped from their home and somehow ended up at the cemetery. Then why was he at Robert Thibodeau's grave specifically? And why is he wearing the same blue ribbon that Amelia always put on Whiskers? Sarah picked up the cat again, marveling at how perfectly he fit in her arms. "James, I know it sounds crazy, but what if some bonds are strong enough to transcend the normal rules of life and death?" That night, Sarah lay awake thinking about her sister and the cat now sleeping peacefully at the foot of her bed. Amelia had always believed in things that couldn't be easily explained: the healing power of touch, the importance of hope, the idea that love could work miracles. Maybe, Sarah thought, this was Amelia's way of reminding her that some mysteries were meant to be embraced rather than solved. The next morning, Sarah woke to find the cat sitting by the bedroom window, staring out at the garden with an intensity that seemed almost human. When she approached him, he looked up at her with those familiar yellow eyes and meowed softly, as if trying to communicate something important. "What is it, boy? What are you trying to tell me?" Sarah asked, scratching behind his ears. The cat jumped down from the windowsill and walked to the bedroom door, looking back at her expectantly. Sarah followed him through the house, watching as he moved with purpose toward the back door. When she opened it, he walked directly to a specific spot in the garden, the same spot where Amelia used to sit when she visited, reading her nursing journals while Whiskers played among the flowers. "James?" Sarah called to her husband, who was making coffee in the kitchen. "You need to see this." James joined her in the garden, where the cat was now digging gently at the base of an old magnolia tree. "What's he doing?" "I don't know, but he seems to know exactly what he's looking for." Sarah knelt down beside the cat and began helping him dig. About 6 inches down, her fingers encountered something hard and smooth. She carefully excavated the object and found herself holding a small metal box, tarnished with age but still intact. Inside the box was a letter in Amelia's handwriting, along with a small key and another photograph of Whiskers. The letter was dated October 14th, 1999, the day before Amelia died. "My dearest Sarah," the letter began, "if you're reading this, then something has happened to me. And somehow Whiskers has found his way back to you. I know that sounds impossible, but I've always believed that love creates connections that death cannot break. I've been having dreams lately, strange dreams where I see myself from a distance, as if I'm watching my own life unfold. In these dreams, I see Whiskers waiting for me, not just for days or months, but for years. I see him keeping watch over the people I've cared for, the patients who needed comfort, the families who needed hope. The key in this box opens a safety deposit box at First National Bank downtown, box number 247. Inside, you'll find my journals from the past 15 years of nursing, along with letters from patients and their families. I want you to have them, not just as memories, but as proof that the work we do matters, that the love we give comes back to us in ways we never expect. If Whiskers has truly returned to you, then he's bringing with him all the love I wasn't able to give before I left. Take care of him, Sarah, and know that wherever I am, I'm at peace because the connections we make in life are stronger than anything that can happen to us in death. All my love, always. Amelia P.S. The blue ribbon was our special thing. I told him that as long as he wore it, he would always be able to find his way home. Sarah's hands shook as she finished reading the letter. James stood behind her, his skepticism finally giving way to wonder as he processed the implications of what they had discovered. She buried this the day before she died, Sarah whispered. How could she have known? Maybe she didn't know, James said softly. Maybe she just hoped. Maybe love really is strong enough to transcend time and death. That afternoon, Sarah and James drove to the bank with the cat in his carrier. The safety deposit box contained exactly what Amelia had promised. Years of journals documenting her experiences as a nurse, letters from grateful patients and families, and photographs spanning her entire career. But there was something else in the box that took Sarah's breath away. It was a veterinary record for Whiskers, dated October 10th, 1999, showing that he had been microchipped. The record included a note in Amelia's handwriting. In case we ever get separated, this will help him find his way back to the people who love him. Sarah, James said, his voice filled with amazement. We can have him scanned for the microchip. If this really is the same cat, the chip will still be there. They drove immediately to the nearest veterinary clinic, where Dr. Patricia Rousseau, a woman about Sarah's age, agreed to scan the cat for a microchip. As the scanner passed over the cat's shoulder, it beeped, and a number appeared on the screen. Dr. Rousseau checked her computer database and looked up with an expression of disbelief. This chip was registered to Amelia Williams in 1999. According to our records, this cat's name is Whiskers, and he's been missing for 25 years. The room fell silent except for the soft purring of the cat, who seemed completely unperturbed by the revelation that had just shaken everyone else's understanding of what was possible. "Doctor," Sarah said, her voice barely steady, "is there any medical explanation for how a cat could survive for 33 years? Dr. Rousseau shook her head slowly. "In all my years of practice, I've never seen anything like this. The oldest cat on record lived to be 38, but that was exceptional. This cat appears to be in remarkably good health for his age, better health than most cats half his age, actually." As they drove home, Sarah found herself thinking about all the patients Amelia had cared for over the years, all the families she had comforted, all the lives she had touched with her kindness and dedication. Maybe, she thought, Whiskers had been carrying that love with him all these years, watching over the people Amelia had cared about, waiting for the right moment to complete the circle. That evening, Sarah sat in her garden with Whiskers on her lap, reading through Amelia's journals by the light of the setting sun. The entries revealed a woman who had found deep meaning in her work, who had seen each patient not just as a medical case, but as a human being, deserving of dignity and compassion. One entry, dated just a week before Amelia's death, particularly moved Sarah. "Mrs. Henderson's mother passed away peacefully today. I was with her at the end, holding her hand and telling her that she was loved. Her daughter thanked me, but I think she doesn't understand that I was the one who was blessed. To be present at the moment when someone transitions from this life to whatever comes next, there's no greater honor. I hope that when my time comes, someone will be there to hold my hand and remind me that I am loved." As Sarah closed the journal, Whiskers looked up at her with those wise yellow eyes, and she could swear she saw Amelia's spirit reflected there. Maybe, she thought, this was how love worked, not disappearing when someone died, but finding new ways to manifest itself in the world. "Thank you," she whispered to the cat and to her sister, and to whatever force in the universe had brought them together again. "Thank you for reminding me that some connections are eternal." Whiskers purred and settled more comfortably in her lap, the blue ribbon around his neck catching the last rays of sunlight. He was home at last, carrying with him 25 years of love and the promise that some bonds can never be broken. In the months that followed, Sarah found herself approaching her work with renewed purpose. She began sharing Amelia's journals with her colleagues, using her sister's wisdom to train new nurses and doctors in the art of compassionate care. Whiskers became a therapy cat at the hospital, somehow knowing exactly which patients needed his comforting presence. And sometimes late at night when Sarah was working in her study, she would look up to find Whiskers sitting in the doorway, watching her with those knowing eyes, and she would feel Amelia's presence as clearly as if her sister were standing right beside her. The mystery of how Whiskers had survived for 25 years and found his way back to them remained unsolved, but Sarah had learned that some mysteries were more beautiful when left unexplained. Love, she had discovered, was indeed stronger than death, and the connections we make in life have the power to transcend time itself. We thank you for joining us for this incredible story of love, loss, and the mysterious ways that connections can transcend time itself. The bond between Amelia and Whiskers reminds us that some relationships are so strong they can overcome even the greatest obstacles. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more amazing true stories that will inspire and move you. We share new stories like this every single day, exploring the extraordinary moments that remind us of the power of love and hope in our world. We'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Tell us what city you're watching from and share your own stories about the special bonds you've formed with the animals in your life. Your experiences and perspectives make our community stronger and help us continue to bring you the stories that matter most. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss one of our daily stories. Until next time, remember that love truly is the strongest force in the universe, and sometimes the most incredible things happen when we least expect them. We'll see you tomorrow with another unforgettable story.